Thesis number 4 is adaptive and personalised learning will not be at the expense of learning community. Now, the other side of this proposition is that often adaptive and personalised learning is at the expense of learning community, of people interacting in a social kind of way. And I want to explain how that's the case. Adaptive and personalised learning are things which we speak about a lot lately, and it's one of the great advantages and benefits of these e-learning environments, that the environment can have some sensitivity as to where you're up to, adapt to where you're up to, and personalise your learning experience. However, the problem with that is that students often end up alone, them and the machine. The old school built very, very isolating, individualised learning, even though students were juxtaposed in the same time and space. And it did that via the fact that you were meant to listen while the teacher was speaking. So in a way, the kind of paradigm of this kind of control of listen while the teacher speaks is this image from a book by Michel Foucault, the famous social theorist, about prison education, where in fact each of the prisoners is stuck in a box and they can't relate to each other. You weren't meant to relate to each other. So when you're in a lecture theatre listening to a lecture, when you're in a classroom listening to the teacher speak, you're not meant to relate to each other. You might as well be in these boxes with these little blinkers, because people need to be silent listening while the teacher is speaking. The other architecture, traditional architecture of a certain degree of individualisation was every student having a textbook. Now, this is a textbook by a very famous textbook writer, Petrus Ramus, who was operating originally, the textbooks were only in Latin in the 16th century. This is a 17th century version in English where Ramus reconstructed Euclid's geometry. So here's the title page, and now here is one of the pages on the inside. Now, one of the reasons why this architecture was created was so the students could go back over things that they'd missed out on, so they could look ahead as a kind of a reference point. So this is nothing like the original Euclid, because it's laid out in order from the simplest idea to the hardest idea. It's all in numbered points. But it allows a certain degree of individualisation. You can take the book home, rework things that you don't in your mind that you don't quite understand, jump over things that you know already. So it allows a degree of individualisation and personalisation. And I would argue, in fact, that most e-learning systems don't create any more individualisation than this. But the important thing for me is that the individualisation thing is you're on your own while you're reading this book, right? Other students might be a bit ahead of you or a bit behind you, but to the extent that it's individualised, that it's personalised and it's adaptive in these senses, you are on your own while that adaptation's happening.